being here today. I'm excited to dive into the Word with you this afternoon. But before we get to that, I'm going to stay in this line, so I just want to go to God in prayer as a group. So if you bow your heads with me, let's go to the Lord. Heavenly Father, God, we're so thankful for your presence in this place this afternoon. God, we're not only thankful for your presence here, but we're thankful for your presence in each of our hearts. And God, as we seek to learn from you today, I ask that you would open our ears and that all the words that are said in this room not be mine, not be ours, but God, they be your words. And that our ears would hear what you have to say to us. God, we thank you for this time. It's in your holy name. I want to start by posing a question to you. And that question is, do you believe in magic? Do you believe in magic? I think the answer for most people is no. We don't believe in magic. Because you see, even if you are a fan of magic, even if you love a good illusionist, if you wanted to be a magician when you grew up, most people understand that magic isn't real. Because there's always some type of trick, some sleight of hand, some underlying reason why a magic trick works. And we see that the magic itself is not real, but the illusion is what's before our eyes. And if you've ever had like a little magic kit when you were a kid, the one that comes with the top hat and the wand that you get to wave around, and it's got those things in it like the trick hat that you can pull a bunny out of because there's a little extra pouch in it, even though when you showed the audience, it was completely empty. Or the little foldable flowers that come out of your sleeve and it looks like they just popped out of thin air. Or the little cups with a magnet at the bottom of them so that when you put it over the little metal ball, the metal ball rises to the top of the cup. And when you lift it away, the ball has magically disappeared. It's things like that that help us understand why magic works. Because there's always something that's going on behind the scenes that our eyes don't catch. And with tricks like that, it's easy to understand. It's easy to say, okay, there's a magnet at the top of the cup. That's why the ball disappeared. But for some tricks, some professional magicians who do some amazing things, it's not as easy to see what's going on behind the scenes. And it makes us stop and think, maybe magic is real. Because I have no idea how this person just did that. And I have one specific example I want to show you. I brought a clip of it today. So take a look at this trick. Check this out. Magic.
With a trick using a picture that I've drawn. It's a self-portrait. That's me. This is where we are. Britain's Got Talent. You see, most magicians at this point would ask one of you to reach in and take a card. I'm not going to do that. Instead, if I may, I'm just going to ask each of you one question. David, if I may start with you. If I could ask you to choose a colour, red or black, whatever you say is what we will use. What colour would you like?
Black.
Black. Alicia, the black cards are split into two suits. We have the spades, we have the clubs. Again, if I could ask you to choose, whatever you want is what we will use.
Clubs.
Clubs, fantastic, Amanda. I need you to choose a value for me. What would you like?
9.
9. The 9 of clubs. Simon, you're the boss. I'm going to give you the chance if you like to stick with the 9 of clubs, or you can overrule all of the other judges and you can choose any other card that you like. What would you like?
7 of hearts.
The 7 of hearts. Okay. Guys, there is no way I could know that you would choose the 9 of clubs. There's no way I would know if you would overrule, and if you would, what you would change to. You'd agree I haven't touched these. What I didn't tell you is that I've also drawn on the back of every single other card in this deck. Do you remember those cartoon flip books where you flick through and the little man comes to life? Check this out. You see our magician? He takes off his hat, he reaches inside, he pulls out just one card, ladies and gentlemen, not just any card, it's the 7 of hearts.
I think this face right here. If you're familiar with who Simon Cowell is, he's infamous for being this ruthless judge. He started on American Idol, then moved to these talent shows. But he will tell you, he'll say it like this. And if you stink at something, he'll tell you. And he's made people cry on national TV. And the fact that he looks like this in this photo says how amazing of a trick of an illusion that truly was. And in these magician auditions, Britain's Got Talent, they go on and they give them this little debrief session. And in that session, Simon actually says to, his name is Jamie, the magician, he says to Jamie, he says, Jamie, this might be hard to believe, but I now believe in magic. And that's the debrief that Simon gives to him, which for anybody that's high praise, but coming from Simon Cowell, that is high praise. And I think that these judges, when they see these tricks and they see magicians perform, despite having done something amazing in the first round, and in the second round, and in the third, and the fourth, and the fifth rounds, and there's 6 or 7 rounds that go on these TV shows, and in the 6th round, when somebody comes and does an amazing trick like that, the judges are still blown away, despite having seen something amazing in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth rounds. They've already seen something debacle their imaginations and blow their minds, but they're still baffled because it's amazing. And I think we see a similar situation in the story that we're going to read together today with the disciples, in that the disciples have already seen Jesus do some amazing things at this point in their journey. They've seen him heal a dead boy in a casket on the way to be buried and get up and return to his mother. They've seen him cast out demons from people. They've seen him heal lepers. And the list goes on. And despite having seen all those things, the disciples still don't seem to get it at this point when Jesus does something extraordinary. So we're going to be reading in the book of Luke. We're going to be reading out of chapter 8, starting in verse 22. This is the story of when Jesus calms the storm on the Sea of Galilee. And there's a parallel of this passage in the book of Matthew and in the book of Mark, but we're going to be reading the Luke account today. Chapter 8, starting in verse 22, it says this. One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and started out. As they sailed across, Jesus settled down for a nap. But soon a fierce storm came down on the lake. The boat was filling with water, and they were in real danger. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, "Master, Master, we're going to drown!" And when Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the raging waves. Suddenly the storm stopped, and all was calm. And then he asked them, "Where is your faith?" The disciples were terrified and amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. When he gives a command, even the wind and the waves obey him. This is the word of God. So in this story, the disciples respond out of fear. And I think that's pretty understandable. Because in this moment, if you've ever been to the Sea of Galilee, I had a chance to go last summer to see the Sea of Galilee. And it was an amazing experience and got to see some rich biblical history. And I don't have even close to enough time to talk to you about all of it. But being at the Sea of Galilee, what you have to understand about it is that it's essentially a bowl. The Sea of Galilee sits down in this bowl because to the east, you have the Golan Heights, which are this mountainous range up above the Sea of Galilee. If you remember the story of when Jesus cast the herd of demons out of the man into the herd of pigs, and the pigs fall off the cliff and into the water, that's the Golan Heights. That's right here down in the Sea of Galilee. And then to the north, you have Mount Hermon, which fills down into the Hula Valley into the Sea of Galilee, which feeds into the south of the Jordan River down to the Dead Sea. And then in the west, you have the Galilee Mountains, you have Mount Tabor, again, mountainous ranges up into the Sea of Galilee, because the sea itself sits about 600 or 700 feet below the sea level. So you have mountains, mountains, and then you have the Sea of Galilee down at the bottom of this bowl. And so when this storm that we read about in this passage gets into the sea, it's going to be pretty crazy. Do you guys know what a hand beater is? A hand beater? If you don't know, a hand beater is essentially just a whisk but for lazy people, because it does it for you. And if you stick a hand beater into a bowl, what happens? The batter or the dough, it whips it all around. It gets crazy. It gets on the sides of the bowl, and sometimes it spills out. And you have this mess because it's intense. If you stick a hand beater into a swimming pool, what happens? Not much. You're going to get like maybe a little flip. Like dropping a pedal into a lake, and it just like ripples for a couple seconds, and it's gone. But if you stick a hand beater into a bowl, you're going to get a much different result, and it's going to whip everything around. It's going to be crazy, because all those ingredients have to get mixed into whatever it is you're making. And so this storm acts very much like a hand beater in a bowl when it gets over this bowl that is the Sea of Galilee. So it's going to be a crazy storm. And I think the disciples have a right to be afraid. The text tells us they were in real danger. Their boat was filling with water. So it's crazy. The other thing to understand, I think, is that this storm, I think, was probably pretty sudden. The Sea of Galilee, sea is actually probably a generous word. It's more like a lake. Modern day maps use the word lake a lot when they describe the Sea of Galilee because it's not very big. You can see from one shore to the other Granted, it's a long way, but you can see it. It's not like, it's kind of like the Great Lakes we have around Michigan people at. It's not like a Great Lake, but it's like a lake that you can see across. It would take several hours to get across in a rowboat, but it's small nonetheless. So if the disciples are standing on the edge of the shore and Jesus says, all right, let's get in the boat, let's go across the lake. If there's this fierce storm coming over the mountains, I don't think the disciples would have just said, all right, let's go. I think they would have been sane enough to realize, oh, the storm is coming, we probably don't want to get in the boat, it's going to get crazy, we should probably wait till the storm's over. So what I'm imagining is that there's nothing in the sky when they get into this boat, and then they get onto the water, and this storm comes out of nowhere. So they have this crazy storm, and it came out of nowhere, so they're scared. And then the third thing to realize about this situation, and this is the one I always forget when I'm reading the Gospels, is that the disciples are young. They are young. We don't get exact ages or dates pinned out from either one of these, but there's a pretty general consensus that these are young. Most of them are teenagers. And I don't know if you've ever seen a group of 15-year-old boys try to operate a canoe, but it usually doesn't end very well. I mean, it usually ends up with guys in the water, the boat's flipping over, things are getting ruined. And I realize that the disciples in this context would have been more familiar with boating than a group of modern-day 15-year-olds. But you get the picture. These are kids in the middle of the storm. They came out of nowhere in the ocean. Their boat is filling with water, and they're in real danger. So they're scared. So what does Jesus do? We see that the first thing he does is rebukes the wind and the waves. But before we get to that, I think it's important to understand maybe what's going through his mind. Because if you've ever thought about it, Jesus is actually a mind reader. I think we consciously think about the fact that God can read our thoughts and knows what we're thinking, but Jesus, who is also God, the man, can read people's thoughts. Jesus doesn't just respond to the disciples' emotions like you or I would. He actually knows their thoughts. You see, when we interact with people, we choose what we're going to say, and we read people based on three things: their words, their actions, and their expressions. We read people based on what they say, what they do, and the way they look. And that's how we decide what we're going to say or do next in a conversation, in an interaction with someone. But Jesus has a fourth dimension. Jesus can actually read people's minds. And we see this all throughout the New Testament. In Matthew 9, Jesus knew what the religious leaders were thinking, so he addressed it. Matthew 12:15, Jesus knew what the Pharisees were planning to do, so he said this. Mark 2:8, Jesus knew what the Pharisees were thinking, so etc., etc. And it's not just the Pharisees or the religious leaders, the teachers, or the quote-unquote bad guys in the story. He can read everybody's thoughts. In the next chapter of Luke 9, the disciples were arguing about who was the greatest in the kingdom. And Jesus knew their thoughts, and so he taught them. In Luke 11, the crowd thought maybe Jesus could cast out demons because he was demonic himself. But Jesus knew their thoughts, and so he addressed and condemned those thoughts. So Jesus knows the thoughts of the disciples. And in this moment, they have two choices. They can choose to respond out of fear, or they can choose to respond out of faith. And in this moment, I think we see that the disciples choose to respond out of fear, because they can cry out to Jesus, and they can say, Jesus, wake up, what are you doing? Where are you? The Mark account of this story actually says that one of the disciples shouts, Jesus, do you even care about us? Do you even care that we're drowning? Out of fear. Or they can choose to respond out of faith. They could have gone to Jesus and said, Jesus, wake him up. Also, I don't like to be woken up, so I can't imagine that Jesus did either, especially the fact that this guy probably didn't sleep too much because he was busy. But they could have gone to Jesus and woken him up and said, Jesus, you may have noticed there's a storm. We're scared. We're probably going to die. It feels like that. But we know that you're powerful. We know that you're going to save us and that you're here. So if you could just wake up, come on out, maybe calm the storm. That would be awesome. We're scared, but we know you're here. You can do it. So that could have been their response. Not very likely in this scary situation. But they had those two options to respond out of fear or out of faith. It's kind of like when I tell my fiance, kind of sitting back there, when I tell her that I know where I'm going, it's a similar situation. Because when I go somewhere new, I get into a car, I like to look up where I'm going ahead of time. I like to know the roads that I'm going to be on. I like to know the navigation, the names of the streets, which turn I'm going to turn when, what time I'm going to get there, if there's a back road I need to take, if there's an alternate route. I want to know all that stuff beforehand. Because the alternative is that there's somebody sitting in the passenger seat looking at the map, telling me what to do the whole time, and I don't have any control. And I like that. And that's like a personal problem that I have, and we can maybe preach about that another time, and you can talk to me about it. But the other option is me holding it in my hand while I'm driving, and I'm looking at the map instead of the road, and it's distracting, and then we end up wrecking and it's not a good time. But I like to look it up ahead of time. So when we get into the car and we're going to go somewhere new, and we sit down, and Caroline says to me, Matt, do you know where you're going? And I'll say, of course, I looked it up ahead of time. Whether or not I actually did, I'll say that, no matter what. And she has two choices in that moment as well. She can choose to respond in faith and say, okay, great, I'm going to take a nap. You know where you're going, I trust you. Or she can respond in fear, and she can look it up on her phone, despite the fact that I said I knew where I was going, either in front of me, or she can hide it like behind her legs so that my pride isn't hurt too much. But she has those two choices. She can respond in fear, or she can respond in faith. And Jesus knows what the disciples are thinking, so he knows their hearts when they choose to respond in fear. I don't have that luxury because I'm not Jesus. But Jesus does. And so, in this moment, when Jesus knows their thoughts and knows that they responded out of fear, what does he do? First thing he does is he gets up and he actually speaks to the wind and the waves. He calmly gets up and rebukes the storm. And it's important to note here that Jesus doesn't pray to the Father to have this storm calm. He doesn't say, Father God, come and relieve these waves and this wind. He says, storm, be calm. He speaks to creation because this is such a perfect explanation and a good, clear picture of Jesus' divinity. Because so many times throughout the New Testament, we see Jesus in public, or more often in private, praying to the Father, asking for relief, asking for comfort, asking for help, provision. But in this moment, Jesus commands. We get a picture of his divinity because he does what only God can do, and he commands creation. And I can't imagine how drastic that moment would have been. We just talked about the storm, how crazy it was and what's going on, and how there's so much fear because it's such an intense situation with this storm. And then in verse 24, he woke up and rebuked the wind, and suddenly the storm stopped, and all was calm. I can't imagine how drastic of a change and how blown away the disciples would have been in that moment. So in that moment, Jesus turns and we see that Jesus says 4 words after he's awake in this Luke account. So he rebukes the wind. Everything is calm. And then I'm imagining this about-face turn towards the disciples. It doesn't say that, but that's what I'm imagining. And he says, where is your faith? Where is your faith? In the passage that Connor read